The blizzard hit Colorado territory so hard that Samuel Lawson could barely see his own gloved hands gripping the reins. But he still managed to spot the flash of white lace half, buried in the snowdrift, beside the rutted trail leading out of Telluride. He pulled his horse to an abrupt halt, squinting through the swirling snow, certain his eyes were playing tricks on him because no sane person would be out in this weather, let alone dressed for a wedding. But there she was, a woman in a soaked bridal gown, her dark hair plastered against her pale face, her lips turning blue. Samuel threw himself from his horse without a second thought, his boots sinking deep into the fresh powder as he rushed toward her. She was conscious, but barely, her green eyes unfocused and glassy as she tried to form words through chattering teeth. He stripped off his heavy coat immediately and wrapped it around her shivering form, the wedding dress beneath it frozen stiff in places. "What in God's name are you doing out here?" he demanded, not harshly but with genuine concern as he lifted her from the drift. She weighed almost nothing, or perhaps the adrenaline coursing through his veins made her seem lighter than she was. "He did not want me," she whispered, her voice cracking with cold and something deeper, something that sounded like heartbreak so profound it had nearly killed her. "Left me. Just left me." Samuel felt anger surge through him, hot and fierce despite the bitter cold. What kind of man would abandon a woman in weather like this? He carried her to his horse, knowing he had to get her somewhere warm immediately or she would not survive the night. His ranch was closer than town, just another 2 miles if he pushed hard. "Hold on to me," he told her, mounting up with her cradled against his chest. She could barely grip his shirt, her fingers stiff and unresponsive. He urged his horse forward, tucking her head beneath his chin to shield her face from the wind. The ride to his ranch felt like it took hours, though it could not have been more than 20 minutes. By the time he reached the small wooden house with its modest barn and corral, she had stopped shivering, which frightened him more than anything else. He had heard stories of people freezing to death, knew that when the shivering stopped, you were running out of time. He kicked open his front door and carried her straight to the fireplace, where embers still glowed from the morning's fire. He laid her on the rug and worked quickly to build up the flames, his hands moving with practiced efficiency despite the urgency hammering in his chest. Once the fire was roaring, he turned his attention back to her. The wet dress had to come off, or she would never warm up properly. Samuel hesitated, propriety warring with practicality, but survival won out. He found a knife and carefully cut through the layers of frozen fabric, peeling them away to reveal skin that was frighteningly pale. He wrapped her in every blanket he owned and rubbed her arms and legs vigorously, trying to restore circulation. "Come on," he muttered, working over her. "Do not give up now. You are safe here. I promise you are safe." Her eyelids fluttered and she made a small sound, something between a sob and a gasp. Samuel kept working, kept talking to her in low, steady tones, though he was not even sure what he was saying anymore. Eventually, mercifully, she began to shiver again, violent tremors that shook her whole body but meant her system was still fighting. "That is it," he encouraged. "That is good. Stay with me." "Cold," she managed to whisper. "So cold." I know you are, but you are going to be all right." He heated water on the stove and made weak tea, lifting her head carefully to help her take small sips. She could barely swallow at first, but gradually she managed more. Color began to return to her lips, though they were chapped and cracked. Her fingers and toes were worryingly pale, but as he warmed them carefully, he saw no signs of the blackening that would indicate serious frostbite. It was well past midnight before Samuel felt confident enough to stop his constant ministrations. She had fallen into an exhausted sleep, her breathing steady and deep. He sat back on his heels, suddenly aware of how tired he was, how his shoulders ached and his own clothes were still damp from the snow. He changed into dry things and made himself coffee, too wired to sleep despite the late hour. The storm still raged outside, rattling the windows and howling down the chimney. He found himself staring at the woman sleeping by his fire, wondering who she was and what had happened to bring her to the edge of death on that lonely road. The wedding dress lay in a ruined heap near the door. Even torn and frozen, it must have been beautiful once, expensive too, with delicate lace and careful beadwork. This was not some hasty frontier wedding. Someone had put time and money into that dress, into planning what should have been an important day. And then what? The groom had changed his mind. Left her there in the middle of a blizzard. Samuel felt that surge of anger again. He was not a violent man by nature. He had seen enough violence in his 32 years to last a lifetime. But the thought of some coward abandoning a woman to die made his hands curl into fists. He must have dozed off in his chair because the next thing he knew, weak winter sunlight was filtering through the windows and the woman was awake, watching him with those remarkable green eyes. They were clearer now, aware and intelligent, but filled with a sorrow that made his chest ache. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice rough from sleep. "Like I should be dead," she said quietly. Her voice was different too, stronger, with a cultured accent that spoke of education and breeding. "You saved my life. I could not very well leave you there. Many men would have." He did not know what to say to that, so he got up and busied himself making breakfast. She watched him the whole time, wrapped in his blankets like a cocoon, the firelight catching in her dark hair. It was beautiful hair, he noticed, the kind that looked almost black in shadow but showed hints of deep brown in the light. "My name is Zara Thorne," she said finally. "Though I suppose I should tell you the whole ugly truth since you risked your life for mine. You do not owe me anything." "I do, though. I owe you everything." She took a shaky breath. "I was supposed to marry Gerald Pemberton yesterday. He is, or was, a wealthy merchant from Denver. Our families arranged the match. I thought he was in agreement, thought he wanted the marriage as much as our parents did." Samuel brought her coffee and sat down across from her, listening. The wedding was supposed to take place at the hotel in Telluride. Everyone was there. I was ready, dressed, and waiting. Then Gerald's cousin came to my room and told me that Gerald had left. Just gone. He had gotten on his horse and ridden out of town without a word to anyone. Her voice cracked, but she pushed on. The cousin said Gerald told him he could not go through with it, that he had thought he could marry for convenience and position, but he realized he could not. That I was perfectly suitable, but he did not want me. Those were his exact words. He did not want me. Samuel felt his jaw tighten. "So you went after him?" "I do not even know why. Maybe I thought I could change his mind, or maybe I just wanted to hear him say it to my face." I was not thinking clearly. I was humiliated and hurt and angry. I borrowed a horse from the livery and rode out in the direction they said he had gone. But the storm came up so fast, and I was not dressed for it, and I got lost. The horse threw me somewhere along the way and ran off. I tried to walk back, but I could not find the road. Then I could not feel my feet anymore, could not feel anything, and I just wanted to lie down and rest. Thank God you did not get that far before I came along. Why were you out in that storm? I had been in town for supplies. Left earlier than I should have, did not realize how bad it was going to get. When it hit, I was already halfway home, so I just pushed through. Zara looked down at her hands. My family must think I am dead. Everyone must think that. The storm will have blocked the roads. Nobody is going anywhere until it clears and the passes are safe again. That could be days. I suppose it does not matter. I have nothing to go back to anyway. I am completely ruined. left at the altar and then disappeared. My reputation is destroyed. That is not your fault. It does not matter whose fault it is. The result is the same." She laughed, a bitter sound. "You know the worst part. I did not even love him. I barely knew him. But I thought I could make a good marriage, be a proper wife. I thought I was worth at least that much. Apparently, I was wrong." "Now you listen to me," Samuel said firmly. "Whatever that fool's reasons were for leaving, they had nothing to do with your worth. A man who would abandon a woman to a storm like that is not fit to judge anyone's value." Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back stubbornly. "You do not know me. I could be terrible. I know you survived a blizzard that should have killed you. I know you are still here fighting. That tells me plenty." They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. Eventually, Samuel made her eat some of the breakfast he had prepared. She managed a few bites, though she clearly had little appetite. When she started to doze again, he did not protest. Rest was what she needed most now. The storm lasted 3 more days. 3 days during which Samuel and Zara were completely cut off from the outside world, trapped together in his small ranch house with nothing but each other for company. At first she was quiet and withdrawn, spending most of her time sleeping or staring into the fire. But gradually, as her strength returned and the shock began to wear off, she started to come back to herself. She was clever, Samuel discovered. Well-read and sharp-witted, with opinions on everything from politics to literature. She had been educated at a proper finishing school back east, but unlike many women of her class, she had actually paid attention and thought about what she learned. She could discuss Darwin and Dickens with equal ease, could argue about Western expansion and railroad policy without any of the vapid agreement he was used to from society women. She was also practical in ways that surprised him. When she saw him struggling to mend a shirt, she took it from him and did it herself, her stitches small and neat. She helped with cooking and cleaning without being asked, not because she thought she owed him, but because she genuinely wanted to help. She was not afraid of work, which was unusual for someone of her obvious background. "My mother believed that every woman should know how to run a household," she explained when he commented on it. "Even wealthy women. She said you never knew when fortune might turn and you would need to rely on yourself." "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She was. She died 5 years ago. That is when my father started making arrangements for my marriage. I think he did not know what else to do with me." Samuel learned that Zara was 24, educated, and had been considered something of an old maid by her social circle. The match with Gerald had been a last-ditch effort by her father to see her settled before he himself passed on. He was not cruel, she insisted, just practical and not particularly affectionate. He saw marriage as a business arrangement and could not understand why Zara might want more than that. In turn, Zara learned about Samuel. He had been born in Missouri, came west after the war that had torn the nation apart. He had fought for the Union and seen things he did not like to talk about. Afterward, he had drifted for several years, working as a ranch hand and occasional scout, before finally settling on this piece of land outside Telluride 3 years ago. He rang cattle, not many but enough to get by, and did odd jobs in town when he needed extra money. "Why did you never marry?" she asked one evening as they sat by the fire. "Never found the right woman, I suppose. This is not an easy life. It takes a special kind of person to be happy out here, isolated like this. I did not want to trap someone in a life they would end up resenting." "That is very considerate. Or maybe just cowardly. Maybe I was afraid of being rejected." "I do not think you are a coward." Their eyes met and Samuel felt something shift in his chest, something warm and unexpected. He looked away quickly, suddenly aware of how intimate their situation had become. They were alone together, unchaperoned, and had been for days. If anyone found out, Zara's already damaged reputation would be completely destroyed. But more than that, he was becoming aware of her in ways that went beyond simple concern for her well-being. He noticed the way firelight caught in her hair, the sound of her laugh when he said something that amused her, the graceful way she moved when she thought he was not watching. He found himself wanting to make her smile, to chase away the sadness that sometimes clouded her eyes. On the fourth day, the storm finally broke. Samuel went outside to assess the damage and found the world buried under several feet of fresh snow. It would take time to dig out, to make the road passable again. He spent the day clearing paths to the barn and checking on his cattle, most of which had weathered the storm well enough in their shelter. When he came back inside, frozen and exhausted, he found Zara had prepared a hot meal and drawn water for him to wash. It was such a domestic scene that it made his heart clench. This was what he had wanted without really knowing it, someone to come home to, someone who cared whether he was warm and fed. "Thank you," he said, and meant it for more than just the meal. "You have done so much for me." "It is the least I can do." Over dinner, they discussed what would happen next. The road would be clear enough in a few days for travel, weather permitting. Zara would have to decide what she wanted to do, where she wanted to go. "I suppose I should return to Telluride and face the music," she said. "Or perhaps go back to Denver, though I do not know what I would do there. Return to my father's house in disgrace, I suppose. You could stay here." The words were out before Samuel could stop them. Zara looked up, startled. "I do not mean as charity," he said quickly. "I mean, well, this is not going to sound right no matter how I say it, but you need a place to go and I would like to have you here. If you wanted to stay." "Samuel, people would talk. We have already been alone together for days. If I stay longer without being married, it would ruin both our reputations. Then maybe we should get married." The silence that followed was deafening. Samuel could not believe he had just proposed marriage to a woman he had known for less than a week. But now that the words were out there, he found he did not want to take them back. "I know it is sudden," he continued. "I know you do not know me well, but I think we could be happy together. I have come to care for you these past few days, Zara, more than I probably should. You are intelligent and kind and stronger than you think you are. You deserve a man who sees your worth, who wants you, not just as a convenient arrangement but as a true partner. I would like to be that man, if you would let me." Zara's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Samuel, you do not have to rescue me again. You do not owe me marriage just because you saved my life. This is not about obligation. I want you here. I want to build a life with you. I know I am not wealthy and this ranch is small and the work is hard, but I promise I would do everything in my power to make you happy." "Why? Why would you want me?" Gerald did not. "My own father could barely stand to look at me once my mother died. Why would you be different?" Samuel crossed the space between them and took her hands in his. "I cannot speak to why those men were such fools, but I can tell you what I see when I look at you. I see someone brave enough to face a blizzard, strong enough to survive it. I see someone who is not afraid of hard work or honest conversation. I see a woman who makes me laugh, who makes me want to be better. I see someone I could love if you gave me the chance. You barely know me. Then let me get to know you better. Marry me and we will learn each other. I promise to be patient and kind. I promise to want you every single day. You would never have to doubt that." Zara looked down at their joined hands. "This is insane. People do not get married after knowing each other less than a week. People in the West do. Out here, sometimes you have to make quick decisions and trust your instincts. And what are your instincts telling you? That you belong here, with me." She closed her eyes, and for a long moment Samuel thought she would refuse. Then she squeezed his hands and looked up at him with an expression that was equal parts hope and fear. "Ask me again," she whispered. "Ask me properly." Samuel felt his heart start to race. He got down on one knee right there in his small kitchen, still holding her hands. "Zara Thorne, would you do me the very great honor of becoming my wife? I cannot promise you wealth or status, but I can promise you loyalty and respect, and a man who will wake up every morning grateful that you chose him. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said, and then she was crying and smiling at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." Samuel stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her close. She fit against him perfectly, her head tucked beneath his chin. He could feel her heartbeat, quick and strong, matching his own. "I will make you happy," he promised into her hair. "I swear I will try. I believe you." They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other while the fire crackled and the wind whispered against the windows. Finally, Zara pulled back enough to look up at him. "When?" she asked. "When should we marry?" "As soon as the roads are clear enough to get into town. We will need a preacher and witnesses to make it legal. Will people talk? Probably. But let them. We are not doing anything wrong. Once we are married, it does not matter what anyone thinks." The next few days passed in a strange blur of anticipation and domesticity. Samuel continued his work around the ranch while Zara helped where she could, and tried to make plans for a wedding that would be nothing like the elaborate affair she had been preparing for just a week earlier. This would be simple, just the two of them and whoever they could find to witness it, but somehow that felt right. This marriage would not be about show or status. It would be real. Samuel found himself watching Zara constantly, noticing small things about her. The way she bit her lower lip when she was concentrating. The habit she had of tucking her hair behind her ear only to have it fall forward again moments later. The soft humming she did while she worked. Each detail felt precious, like a gift he had not known to ask for. He caught her watching him too sometimes, her expression thoughtful and a little shy. They had not kissed yet, had barely touched beyond that first embrace after his proposal. There was an unspoken agreement between them to take things slowly, to give themselves time to adjust to this sudden engagement before rushing into physical intimacy. But the awareness was there, simmering beneath every interaction. When their hands brushed passing dishes at dinner. When he helped her with her coat. When they sat together in the evening, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her body beside him. A week after the storm ended, the road to Telluride was finally clear enough for travel. Samuel hitched up his wagon and helped Zara up onto the seat beside him. She was wearing a dress he had found in a trunk, one that had belonged to his mother. It was old-fashioned and had needed alterations, but Zara had made it work. She looked beautiful, though she kept fussing with the collar nervously. "What if they refuse to marry us?" she asked as they started down the road. "What if the preacher thinks it is too sudden or improper? Then we will find someone who will. We are both adults and of sound mind. There is no reason we cannot be married if we choose to be. What if Gerald is still in town? Or my father? Do you want to see them?" She was quiet for a moment. "No, I do not think I do. Gerald made his choice and I have made mine. As for my father, he gave up any say in my life when he tried to marry me off to a man who did not want me. This is my choice, Samuel. Mine alone." He reached over and took her hand, gratified when she held on tightly. Telluride was bustling despite the recent storm. The main street had been cleared and people were going about their business, though many stopped to stare as Samuel and Zara passed. She kept her head high, refusing to show any shame or embarrassment even though she must have known people were already whispering about her. Samuel drove directly to the small church at the end of the street. The preacher, a thin man named Reverend Michaels, looked surprised to see them but invited them into his modest office. "I heard there was some trouble with a wedding last week," he said carefully, looking at Zara. "You are Miss Thorne, are you not?" "I am, though I hope to change that name shortly." "I see. And you, sir?" "Samuel Lawson. I have a ranch about 5 miles outside town. We would like you to marry us, Reverend." The preacher looked between them, clearly trying to work out the situation. "This is rather sudden, is it not? The young lady was meant to marry someone else just days ago." "That man made his choice," Samuel said firmly. "Now Miss Thorne is making hers. There is nothing improper about it. We are both free to marry and of legal age." "Will you perform the ceremony, or should we find someone who will?" Reverend Michaels studied them for a long moment. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. "Very well. I will need witnesses. Wait here while I fetch my wife and the deacon." The ceremony was brief and simple. Mrs. Michaels and Deacon Foster stood as witnesses while Reverend Michaels led Samuel and Zara through the traditional vows. Samuel had no ring to offer, but Zara did not seem to mind. When the preacher finally pronounced them man and wife, Samuel leaned down and kissed her gently, sealing the promises they had just made. Zara's eyes were bright when he pulled back, her cheeks flushed. "Mrs. Lawson," she whispered, testing out the name. "That will take some getting used to. You have the rest of your life to practice." They signed the marriage certificate and paid the preacher, then walked back out into the bright winter sunshine as husband and wife. Several people had gathered near the church, drawn by curiosity or gossip. Samuel saw questions and judgment on many faces, but he ignored them all, focusing only on Zara beside him. "We should get you some proper clothes," he said, "and supplies for the house. If you are going to be my wife, I want you to have what you need." They spent the next few hours visiting various shops. Samuel bought fabric for new dresses, practical things suitable for ranch life. He also insisted on getting Zara a warm coat, sturdy boots, and other necessities. She protested at the expense, but he waved off her concerns. He had savings, and he intended to use them to take care of his wife. At the general store, they ran into a well-dressed woman who looked at Zara with undisguised disdain. "Well, well, Miss Thorne, or should I say Mrs. Someone else now, how very quick you moved on from poor Mr. Pemberton." Zara stiffened, but before she could respond, Samuel stepped forward. "It is Mrs. Lawson now, madam, and I would appreciate if you would address my wife with respect." The woman's eyes widened. "Your wife? My goodness, that was fast. The whole town is talking about what happened." "Abandoned at the altar and then disappeared in the storm. We all thought you had frozen to death, dear. Some people even organized a search party, though they could not get out until the weather cleared." "As you can see, I am perfectly fine," Zara said coolly. "My husband found me and brought me to safety. We fell in love and decided to marry. I am very happy with how things turned out." "Love? In less than 2 weeks? How very convenient." "What is convenient?" Samuel said, his voice hard. "Is that Miss Thorne, Mrs. Lawson, did not marry a coward who would abandon her in a storm. What is convenient is that she found a man who actually wants her. Now, if you will excuse us, we have shopping to finish." He took Zara's arm and steered her away from the woman, whose mouth was hanging open in shock. Once they were out of earshot, he heard Zara laughing softly. "Thank you for that," she said. "Though we have probably just ensured that everyone in town will be talking about us for months. Let them talk. As long as you are happy, I do not care what anyone says. I am happy. Happier than I ever was planning that elaborate wedding to Gerald. This feels real in a way that never did." They finished their shopping and loaded the wagon. Samuel was about to help Zara up when a man approached them. He was well dressed in expensive Eastern clothes and had the soft hands of someone unused to physical labor. Samuel disliked him on sight. "Miss Thorne," the man said, ignoring Samuel entirely. "Thank goodness you are alive. Your father has been beside himself with worry." "Mr. Pemberton," Zara said coldly, "I did not expect to see you here. I assumed you had long since returned to Denver." So this was Gerald. Samuel felt his hands curl into fists, but he forced himself to remain calm. "I could not leave until I knew what had happened to you. When you disappeared during the storm, I feared the worst. The whole wedding party has been searching for you." "How very noble of you," Zara said dryly. "Though perhaps you should have thought about my well-being before you abandoned me on our wedding day." Gerald had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I handled that poorly. I admit it. But you must understand I could not go through with a marriage based on nothing but convenience. I have since realized that was a mistake. I am prepared to honor our original agreement if you will have me." "I will not. Be reasonable. You cannot throw away your future out of spite. I know I hurt you, but we can still salvage this. Your reputation need not be permanently damaged." "You think I am refusing you out of spite?" Zara laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "You flatter yourself, Mr. Pemberton. I am refusing you because I am already married." She held up her left hand, showing the simple band Samuel had just bought her in town. Gerald's face went red. "Married? To whom? When?" "To me," Samuel said, stepping forward. "About 2 hours ago. I am Samuel Lawson, Mrs. Lawson's husband." Gerald looked Samuel up and down, taking in his rough work clothes and weathered face with obvious disdain. "A cowboy? You married a common cowboy? Zara, surely you cannot be serious." "I am completely serious. Samuel saved my life when I nearly froze to death in that storm. He took me in, cared for me, and treated me with more respect and kindness in a few days than you showed in all the months we were engaged. He wanted me, Mr. Pemberton. That is something you can never claim. This is ridiculous. You do not know this man. You are making a terrible mistake. The only mistake I made was agreeing to marry you in the first place. Now please excuse us. My husband and I are going home." Samuel helped Zara into the wagon, intensely proud of how she had handled Gerald. As they pulled away, he looked back to see the other man standing in the street, staring after them with a mixture of shock and anger. "Well," Zara said once they were out of town, "that went about as badly as it could have. You were magnificent. I was rude and probably made an enemy. You stood up for yourself, for us. That took courage." She leaned against his shoulder, tired but content. "Do you think we did the right thing, getting married so quickly? Do you regret it?" "No, but I worry that I have dragged you into my mess. Gerald and my father are powerful men. They could make trouble for you. Let them try. I'm not afraid of some soft-handed merchants from Denver. Samuel, I am serious. They could hurt your business, make it hard for you to sell your cattle or get supplies. Then we will find another way." "Zara, I went into this marriage with my eyes open. I know it is going to be complicated, but I meant what I said. I want you here with me. Whatever problems come, we will face them together." She kissed his cheek, a soft brush of lips that sent warmth flooding through him. "How did I get so lucky to have you find me that day? I think I am the lucky one." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun start to sink toward the mountains. The landscape was beautiful, all white snow and dark evergreens against a brilliant blue sky. Samuel found himself thinking about the future, about building a real life with this woman beside him. "What do you want?" he asked suddenly. "From this marriage, from your life here? I know this is not what you planned. You should have been marrying into wealth and society. Instead, you are going to be a rancher's wife, working hard and living simply. Tell me honestly, what do you want this life to look like?" Zara was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I want to be useful," she said finally. "In my old life I was ornamental, something pretty to display but without any real purpose. Here I can work and contribute and feel like I matter. I want to learn everything about ranching, about this life. I want children eventually, if we are blessed with them. I want to grow old with you and know that I built something real, something that matters. Does that sound foolish? It sounds perfect." When they arrived back at the ranch, Samuel carried their packages inside and helped Zara unload. The house felt different now that she was truly his wife, more like a home than just a place he slept. Zara seemed to feel it too, moving through the rooms with new confidence, already planning where to put things and how to arrange their shared space. That night they prepared dinner together, working in easy coordination. After they ate, they sat by the fire as had become their habit, but tonight there was a new tension in the air, an awareness that things had changed between them. They were married now. There were expectations, intimacies that came with that bond. Samuel did not want to push her. She had been through so much recently, had barely had time to process one trauma before being thrust into a marriage with a near stranger. But he also could not deny that he wanted her, that every moment in her presence only intensified that desire. "Zara," he said softly, "I want you to know that there is no pressure tonight. We can take this as slowly as you need. Just because we are married does not mean you owe me anything." She looked at him with those clear green eyes. "What if I want to? What if I am tired of being careful and proper and afraid? You asked me what I wanted from this life and I told you, but there is more. I want to feel wanted, Samuel. I want to know what it is like to be with a man who actually desires me, who chose me because he wanted to, not because he was obligated to. I do want you. God help me. I have wanted you since about the second day when you started to come back to yourself and I saw how strong and beautiful you were. Then show me." Samuel stood and offered her his hand. She took it and let him pull her to her feet. He led her to his bedroom, their bedroom now, and lit the lamp beside the bed. The light was soft and warm, casting gentle shadows across the walls. He kissed her then, really kissed her for the first time since that brief touch after the ceremony. She responded with an eagerness that surprised and delighted him, her arms going around his neck as she pressed closer. She tasted like the coffee they had shared after dinner, sweet and familiar. They took their time undressing each other, learning the landscape of bodies that were still new and unknown. Samuel was gentle and patient, constantly checking to make sure she was comfortable, that she wanted to continue. Zara surprised him with her passion, with the way she touched him and responded to his touch. Afterward they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers trailing lazily through her hair. Samuel felt a contentment he had never experienced before, a sense of rightness that went beyond the physical pleasure they had shared. "Thank you," Zara whispered against his skin. "For what?" "For wanting me. For seeing me as more than just a discarded bride or a charity case. For making me your wife. You have nothing to thank me for. I am the one who should be grateful. You took a chance on me on this life. That took real courage or desperation." "No, it was courage. Do not diminish what you did. You survived something that should have killed you, and then you chose to start over rather than crawling back to a life that made you miserable. That is bravery." She tilted her head to kiss him, slow and sweet. "I love you," she said, the words soft but clear. "I know it is too soon and I should not feel this way yet, but I do. I love you, Samuel Lawson." His heart felt too big for his chest. "I love you too. I think I have from the moment you looked up at me from that snowdrift and refused to give up." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other. And when Samuel woke in the morning to find her still beside him, dark hair spread across his pillow and her face peaceful in sleep, He sent up a silent prayer of thanks for the storm that had brought her into his life. The next few months were a period of adjustment and growth for both of them. Winter gradually gave way to spring, the snow melting to reveal the greening land beneath. Zara threw herself into learning everything about ranch life, determined to be a true partner to Samuel rather than just a dependent wife. She learned to cook over the wood stove, to preserve food for the coming winter, to mend clothes and tend the garden. Samuel taught her to ride properly and to help with the cattle. She was not afraid of hard work or getting dirty, which impressed the few ranch hands they could afford to hire during busy seasons. Word of their hasty marriage spread throughout the county. Some people were scandalized, others were sympathetic, but most simply accepted it as the way things sometimes went in the West. Opportunities for marriage were limited, and people often had to make quick decisions. The fact that Samuel and Zara were clearly devoted to each other went a long way toward silencing critics. Zara's father sent several angry letters demanding she return to Denver and annul the marriage. She refused, responding with a letter of her own explaining that she was happy and had made her choice freely. Eventually, the letters stopped coming. She did not hear from Gerald again, though rumor had it he had returned east and married someone else within a few months. Samuel and Zara fell into comfortable rhythms together, learning each other's habits and preferences. They discovered shared interests in reading and discussing ideas, in working together toward common goals. They also learned how to argue and make up, how to navigate disagreements without letting them fester. Samuel found that having Zara as a partner made the ranch more successful. She had a head for numbers and organization that he lacked, and she helped him plan for the future in ways he never had before. Together they expanded the herd, improved the buildings, and started to build something that could last. But more than the practical benefits, Samuel simply loved having her in his life. He loved waking up beside her every morning, loved coming in from hard work to find her waiting with a smile and a kiss, loved sitting together in the evenings planning their future. She made him laugh and challenged him to think differently and filled the empty spaces in his heart he had not even known existed. In the summer, they made a trip to Denver to sell cattle and buy supplies. While there, they encountered some of Zara's former social circle. The reception was mixed. Some cut her completely, unwilling to acknowledge a woman who had married so far beneath her station. Others were more kind, expressing genuine happiness, that she had found contentment even if they could not understand her choices. Zara bore it all with grace, holding her head high and refusing to apologize for her life. Samuel was fiercely proud of her, and he made sure she knew it. On the trip home, she admitted that while parts of Denver had been difficult, she had no regrets about leaving that world behind. "I was never really happy there," she confessed as they traveled. "I always felt like I was playing a part, pretending to be someone I was not. With you, I can just be myself. That is worth more than all the social status in the world." By late summer, Zara suspected she might be pregnant. Samuel was overjoyed at the possibility, but also worried about her going through childbirth, so far from town and proper medical care. They discussed their options and decided that, when the time came, they would travel to Telluride so she could be near the doctor. The pregnancy was confirmed in September. Zara bloomed with it, her face glowing and her figure rounding in ways that Samuel found beautiful. He became even more protective, insisting she not overwork herself and taking on tasks she would normally have handled. "I am pregnant, not fragile," she protested when he tried to stop her from carrying water. "Women have been doing this work while carrying babies since the dawn of time. That does not mean you have to. Let me take care of you. You already take care of me. Now let me help you back, or I will go stir crazy." They compromised, with Zara doing lighter tasks and Samuel handling anything particularly strenuous. As fall turned to winter, they prepared for the arrival of their first child. Samuel built a cradle with his own hands, sanding it smooth and making sure there were no rough edges. Zara sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her face soft with anticipation whenever she looked at them. In January, when the snow was deep and the nights were long, Zara went into labor. Samuel had been watching the weather carefully, and they had already moved to a room at the boarding house in Telluride a week earlier, not wanting to risk being caught at the ranch when her time came. The labor was long and difficult. Samuel paced outside the room while the doctor and midwife attended Zara, hearing her cries and feeling helpless to do anything to ease her pain. He prayed more in those hours than he had in his entire life, begging God to keep his wife safe, to bring their baby into the world healthy and whole. Finally, just as dawn was breaking, he heard a new sound, the thin, outraged wail of a newborn baby. The midwife opened the door with a smile. "You have a son, Mr. Lawson, a big, healthy boy, and your wife is doing just fine." Samuel rushed into the room to find Zara exhausted but smiling, holding a bundle wrapped in soft blankets. She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. "Samuel, meet your son." He approached almost reverently and looked down at the tiny face peeking out from the blankets. The baby had dark hair like his mother and was red-faced from crying, little fists waving in the air. Samuel felt his own eyes sting with tears as he carefully took his son in his arms for the first time. "He is perfect," he whispered. "You are perfect. Thank you for this." "We made him together," Zara said, her voice weak but happy. "He is ours. What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months without settling on anything. But looking at his son now, Samuel knew exactly what felt right. "Nathaniel," he said. "Nathan for short. It means gift from God." "That is what he is. What you both are. Gifts I never expected but will spend the rest of my life being grateful for." "Nathan Lawson." Zara tried the name out. "I love it." They stayed in town for 2 weeks while Zara recovered her strength and they learned how to care for their newborn son. Nathan was a good baby, mostly quiet except when he was hungry, and he seemed to grow bigger every day. Samuel was amazed by him, by the tiny fingers and toes, the way he would grip Samuel's finger when it was offered, the small sounds he made while sleeping. When they finally returned to the ranch, it felt like coming home in a way it never had before. This was not just a place Samuel lived anymore. It was where he was building a family, creating a legacy that would outlast him. The next few years passed in a blur of activity and growth. Nathan grew into a curious, energetic toddler who wanted to be outside with his father every moment he was allowed. Zara continued to be an invaluable partner in running the ranch, somehow managing to balance caring for their son with helping Samuel with the business. When Nathan was 3, they welcomed a daughter they named Rebecca. She was smaller than her brother had been, with reddish-brown hair and her father's brown eyes. Nathan was fascinated by his baby sister and wanted to help with everything, though his help was not always actually helpful. Samuel could not have been happier. His family was healthy, the ranch was thriving, and he woke up every day grateful for the life he had built with Zara. The woman he had pulled from a snowdrift 5 years earlier had become the center of his entire world. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Samuel surprised Zara with a proper ring. Not the simple band he had bought her in haste in Telluride, but a beautiful gold ring with a small diamond. It had cost him months of savings, but he did not care. He wanted her to have something that showed how much he valued her, how much she meant to him. "Samuel, it is beautiful," she breathed when he slipped it onto her finger. "But you should not have spent so much. You are worth this and more." I know I could not give you the life of luxury you might have had with Gerald, but I hope I have given you something better. I hope I have made you happy. You have given me everything that matters. Love, partnership, children, a home. I could not ask for more. They stood together on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sun set over the mountains while their children played in the yard. Nathan was teaching Rebecca how to catch frogs by the creek, her delighted laughter carrying on the evening air. "You ever think about that day?" Zara asked. "When you found me in the snow, all the time. Best day of my life, even though I did not know it at the time. I was so lost then, so certain that I was worthless because one man did not want me. I could never have imagined this, could never have dreamed I would be this happy. Gerald was a fool, but I am grateful for his foolishness because it brought you to me." Zara laughed and leaned against him. "I love you, Samuel Lawson, more than I knew it was possible to love someone. I love you too, always will." As the years continued to pass, the Lawson Ranch became known throughout the county as a model of hard work and successful partnership. Other ranchers sought Samuel's advice on managing cattle, while their wives often came to Zara for help with preserving food or managing household accounts. The couple had become respected members of the community, their hasty marriage long since forgiven and forgotten by all but a few. Nathan and Rebecca were joined by another son, Thomas, when Nathan was 7. The house that had once seemed too large for just Samuel now felt almost too small for their growing family. He added on 2 more rooms, working late into the evenings to give his children proper spaces of their own. Zara's abilities as a mother amazed Samuel daily. She was patient but firm, loving but not indulgent. She taught their children to read and write, to appreciate books and learning, while also making sure they understood the value of hard work. Nathan was already helping seriously with ranch work by the time he was 10, and even little Thomas insisted on having his own small chores. Rebecca, at 7, showed a particular talent for gentling horses. She had a way with animals that neither Samuel nor Zara quite understood, but they encouraged it. She would spend hours in the barn, talking to the horses in her soft voice, earning their trust in ways that usually took Samuel weeks to accomplish. When Nathan turned 15, he asked to take on more responsibility around the ranch. Samuel agreed, proud of his son's willingness to step up, but also aware that it meant time was passing, that his oldest child was well on his way to manhood. Where had the years gone? It seemed like just yesterday he was holding a tiny baby in the Telluride boarding house. Zara felt it too, the bittersweet awareness of how quickly their children were growing. They would lie in bed at night and talk about it, about how blessed they were and how much they missed the days when the children were small enough to scoop up and cuddle. "We could have another," Samuel suggested one night, only half joking. Zara laughed. "I am 40 years old, Samuel. My body has been through enough. You are still beautiful to me, more beautiful now than the day I found you." Flatterer. "But no, I think our family is complete as it is. 3 healthy children is more than many people are blessed with. I am content." He pulled her close and kissed her temple. "As long as you are happy, I am happy." They celebrated their 10th anniversary with a small party, inviting neighboring families and friends from town. It was a joyous affair, with food and music and dancing. Samuel watched Zara laughing with their friends, her face alight with genuine happiness, and felt his heart swell with love and pride. Later that night, after all the guests had gone and the children were in bed, they sat together on the porch as they had done so many times before. 10 years, Zara mused. It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all. Do you ever regret it? Choosing this life over what you could have had? Not for a single moment. Samuel, you gave me something no amount of wealth or status could match. You gave me a real life, a real family, real love. How could I possibly regret that? I just want to make sure you are happy. I am, more than I ever imagined possible. You kept your promise. You made me happy. The years continued to roll by, each bringing new challenges and new joys. There were hard times too, droughts that made water scarce and winters that were brutal. They lost cattle to disease one year and nearly lost the ranch when a wildfire swept through the valley. But they weathered every storm together, supporting each other through the difficult times and celebrating together during the good ones. Nathan eventually married a sweet young woman from town named Emma, and they built a small house on the far edge of the Lawson property. He continued to work the ranch with his father, the two of them now more like partners than father and son. When Emma gave birth to a daughter, making Samuel and Zara grandparents for the first time, Samuel felt another piece of his heart click into place. Rebecca married at 19 to a horse trader named James who appreciated her gift with animals. They settled nearby and established a successful business breeding and training horses. Thomas, the youngest, talked about going east to university, wanting to study agriculture and animal husbandry. Samuel and Zara encouraged him, pleased that their children felt free to pursue their own dreams. On their 20th anniversary, Samuel and Zara took a rare trip alone, leaving the ranch in Nathan's capable hands for a week. They went to Denver, staying in a fine hotel and attending the theater, things Zara had not done since before her first failed wedding. Walking through the city she had once called home, Zara was struck by how foreign it all seemed now. She had become a woman of the West, comfortable with open spaces and physical work, with honest conversation and simple pleasures. The elaborate social rituals and pretensions of city society felt stifling. I could never go back to this, she told Samuel as they watched a play one evening. This world does not fit me anymore. Maybe it never really did. You have no regrets about leaving it behind, none at all. The life we built together is worth more than all of this 1,000 times over. They returned home to find that Nathan and Emma had surprised them by organizing a renewal of vows ceremony. The whole community turned out for it, many of the same people who had witnessed their hasty wedding 20 years earlier. This time there was no rush, no scandal, just two people who had loved each other deeply for decades and wanted to publicly reaffirm their commitment. As Samuel spoke his vows again, looking into Zara's eyes and meaning every word just as much as he had the first time, he was overwhelmed with gratitude. For the storm that had blown Zara into his life, for her courage in choosing him over the safe, expected path. For every day, every moment they had shared since then. When Zara spoke her vows, her voice was strong and clear. You found me when I was lost, Samuel Lawson. You gave me warmth when I was freezing. You wanted me when I thought no one ever would. You gave me a life and a love beyond anything I could have imagined. I promise to love you for whatever time we have left, and beyond, if such things are possible. There was not a dry eye in the gathering when they kissed, sealing promises they had already kept for 2 decades. The years continued their steady march. Samuel's hair turned fully gray, then white. Zara's dark hair gained threads of silver that Samuel thought only made her more beautiful. They moved a little slower, woke up a little stiffer, but their love never diminished. If anything, it deepened with time, becoming richer and more complex. They watched their children raise families of their own, saw their grandchildren take their first steps, speak their first words. The ranch continued to thrive under the combined efforts of Samuel, Nathan, and now Nathan's oldest son, who was already showing a keen interest in the family business at just 12 years old. On quiet evenings, Samuel and Zara would still sit together on the porch, hands clasped, watching the sun set over the mountains. They did not always talk. Sometimes just being together was enough. But sometimes they would reminisce, remembering the early days of their marriage, laughing over mistakes they had made and marveling at how far they had come. "You remember that first winter?" Zara asked one evening when they were both in their 60s. "When we were trapped in this house together by the storm, how could I forget? That was when I fell in love with you. I fell in love with you then too, though I was too proud and scared to admit it at first. I am glad you got over your pride. I am glad you pulled me out of that snowdrift." Samuel squeezed her hand. "Best decision I ever made, stopping on that road that day. I almost did not, almost kept riding because the storm was so bad. But something made me look, something made me stop. Fate," Zara said softly, "or divine providence, or whatever you want to call it. We were meant to find each other. I truly believe that. I do too." They sat in comfortable silence as the last light faded from the sky and the first stars began to appear. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of family. Nathan and his oldest children had come for dinner and were still there, laughing and talking. Rebecca had stopped by with her youngest son. Even Thomas had made the trip from Denver, where he now worked as a professor of agriculture. "We built something good here," Samuel said. "You and me together. We built a family, a legacy. Our children and grandchildren are going to carry on long after we are gone. It is more than I ever dreamed of having. When Gerald left me, I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing to offer, no value beyond being someone's wife. But you showed me I was wrong. You showed me I could be a partner, a mother, a full person in my own right. You always were those things. I just had the privilege of seeing it when others were too blind to look." As they grew older, Samuel and Zara began to slow down more noticeably. Nathan took over most of the day-to-day running of the ranch, though Samuel still insisted on helping where he could. Zara's joints ached on cold mornings, making it harder for her to do the work she had once done so effortlessly. But they adapted, finding new ways to be useful and valuable even as their bodies began to fail them. They celebrated their 30th anniversary surrounded by 3 children, 8 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. It was a massive gathering that filled their house to bursting. Samuel looked around at all the faces, all the lives that had come into existence, because he had stopped to help a freezing woman in a snowdrift 3 decades earlier, and felt profound contentment. That night, after everyone had gone home and they were finally alone, Zara curled up against him in bed as she had done thousands of times before. 30 years, she whispered. 30 years since you asked me to marry you in this very house. The best 30 years of my life. Mine too. Samuel, I need you to know something. No matter what happens, no matter how much time we have left, I want you to know that being your wife has been the greatest honor of my life. You made me feel wanted every single day. You kept your promise. You made me feel needed and loved. You gave purpose to my life. I was just existing before you. With you, I truly lived. They held each other close, 2 people who had started as strangers and become as essential to each other as breathing. Outside, a light snow began to fall, coating the world in white, reminiscent of that first storm that had brought them together. Samuel and Zara lived to celebrate their 35th anniversary, then their 40th. Samuel passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 73, with Zara holding his hand. She followed him just 6 months later, unable to bear the world without her partner, her love, the man who had saved her life in more ways than one. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, with a simple stone that read, "Samuel Lawson, beloved husband, father, and grandfather. Zara Lawson, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, together always. The ranch continued under Nathan's stewardship, then passed to his children and eventually to theirs. The story of how Samuel had found Zara became family legend, passed down through generations. A tale of love born from tragedy, of two souls who found each other against all odds and built something that endured in the end. What Gerald Pemberton had meant as rejection became the greatest gift he could have given. By refusing to marry Zara, he had freed her to find real love, true partnership, and a life of meaning and purpose. Samuel had wanted her, not for social position or family connections, but for herself. And in wanting her, in choosing her when she felt most worthless, he had given her back her sense of self-worth. Their love story became the foundation on which generations were built. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren grew up hearing about the cowboy who pulled a freezing bride from a drift and made her his wife. About how he had wanted her when another man did not, and how that simple act of kindness and love had changed the course of so many lives. The ranch still stood more than a century later, still in the family, still producing cattle and horses. And on cold winter nights when the snow fell thick and fast, family members would sometimes stand by the window and think about that long-ago storm. About how something that should have ended in tragedy instead became the beginning of a love story for the ages. Because Samuel had stopped when he could have kept riding. Because Zara had chosen courage over safety. Because when she said he did not want me, Samuel had responded with the simple truth that changed everything. But I do.